The founding of the Mennonite settlement in Spanish Lookout is well known, both nationally and internationally. After Peter Friesen arrived and surveyed the land, the rest of the original founders joined him from Chihuahua, Mexico, determined to see whether Belize could be a new home for their community. Through much toil, hard work, cooperation, and faith in God, the founding families were able to clear the original land they bought. From the start, Spanish Lookout's founders were innovators, adapting to the qualities of Belize's tropical landscape and agriculture. The founders learned the distinct characters of Belize's black soil, the crops that best adapted for the area, minerals that could be used for infrastructure and fertilizers, and eventually learned how to seek out resources from outside Belize when local resources were scarce, introducing new forms of cattle and fowl into the country. It's through this work that the Spanish Lookout community has become the place that it is today, a place that continues to persevere in the face of continuing struggles, a place that keeps central faith and trust in God in its efforts to remain united, a place that in many ways has become the heart of modern-day Belize. In the 10 years since its 50th anniversary, and in the face of continuous challenges, Spanish Lookout has continued to grow in its industries, its positive impact on neighboring communities, and in making a name for itself on the international scene as one of the most remarkable sites for agriculture in the region today. No development in Spanish Lookout since its founding was more significant than the discovery of oil reservoirs under the Belizean landmass in 2005. With the result of the work by Susan Morris and Sheila McCaffrey, the right of the oil they found was soon turned over to Belize Natural Energy, a foreign-based company intent on extracting the oil under the Iguana Creek area. Oil that was both stored under high pressure and of a relatively high quality. Unfamiliar with the oil industry, the Spanish Lookout community was uncertain how they should navigate the good fortune with which they found themselves. Additionally, the community also found itself in the unprecedented position of having external groups entering the community with interests dramatically different than its own regarding how the oil extraction process should be conducted. Concerned about some of the advice they had received from members of B&E,
we found a local retired geologist by the name of Jim Cavanaugh, who was very willing to help us and did a lot of work for us. And on his advice, we traveled to Houston and to Trinidad in a fact-finding mission to find out what oil production was all about, what it entailed, how people fared, with it on their land. But we found that somebody had the title to the subsurface. That was one of the bigger concerns that we had. More on the agriculture side, it was probably fencing. How would we block off all these blocks for the pump jacks and have our cattle grazing in between? But more of a concern was the social and the health of it. There was a flare burning 24 hours a day and night, with a strong scent, and we were very concerned about the effects of that on our health. Up to that day, we lived in the backcountry where our children walked to school, and the parents weren't worried about what was happening. All that now was changing because we had visitors and people on the ground 24 hours a day at night and somewhere, and we had a real concern about who all would hide behind those people.
Once it was determined that oil extraction would occur, B&E worked with the community to develop its road infrastructure to improve access to the oil wells for large machinery. These improved roadways, along with the injection of new revenue into the community, facilitated the founding of several new businesses within the community that have made Spanish Lookout a new hub of activity for fields other than agriculture. However, under the Standing Petroleum Act, the Spanish Lookout community would only be making 1/4 of 1% from any oil revenues.
We hired a consultant and we spent many hours sitting on tables and doing numbers back and forth. And it took us well over about 8 or 9 months after they found oil until we had a principal agreement in place, which is sometimes referred to as the mother of all agreements.
Since that time, the community has donated a substantial portion of its share of oil revenues to fund several national non-profit organizations.
When it comes to the distribution of the little revenue that we do get, I should say, a portion of it goes to the general road upkeep with the added traffic. We have set aside 30 to 40% for social projects, and a lot of that also goes for the local people. That we strongly believe that the oil is not only for us, and we share a certain percentage of it with the local people.
Locally, the Spanish Lookout community has put its money toward the investment of the education of the children in the neighboring villages. Various projects were also carried out in villages and towns, including, among others, Valley of Peace, Ontario Village, Unitedville, San Marcos, Los Tambos, and Benque Viejo. In these projects, focus was directed at the well-being of the entire villages through improving community centers, roads, sport facilities, and adding a bus stop to improve public transportation routes. A feeding program for socio-economically disadvantaged people in Belize City has also received support. While the present oil wells are nearing depletion, the Spanish Lookout community has learned tremendously from the experience in regards to how they should work with external groups with radically different interests. Most importantly, the experience has renewed the community's emphasis on education, recognizing the importance of having members of its own community trained in industry other than agriculture in order to help look after the community's best interests in the future. One of the first major challenges the people of Spanish Lookout faced was constructing roads within their community that would decrease the amount of time necessary to transport goods and also to create a better road network for their community members. With a network of over 200 miles, of which 15 miles is paved roadway, the Spanish Lookout community has one of the greatest pieces of roadway infrastructure in the entire country, regularly providing their expertise to their neighboring communities. This knack for quality road making provided the means for the Spanish Lookout community to complete a new roadway that connected the Spanish Lookout community and Iguana Creek in 2006. With an improved connection to their neighbors, the Spanish Lookout community has seen increased visits to its local companies by folks eager to partake in and support its fine businesses due to the feeling of security provided in the community. This increase in visitation has also led to the rise of businesses in Spanish Lookout that cater to these visitors, ranging from vehicle mechanics to restaurants and to lumber and mineral sales.
We do have a wide variety of services here in a 2-mile radius in Spanish Lookout. We have homes available, doors, windows, a wide selection of automobile parts and services, new tires available. There is also steel structures available, prefab structures, new trailers. If you need a trailer built, it can be built. There's also a wide selection of hardware stores that provide building materials for your houses or your building needs. And to top it all off, you cannot forget our restaurants and our bed and breakfast. It's the hospitality that we offer to anyone, and it's great food we have out here.
The community's roadway infrastructure does not stop there, however. From 2011 to 2014, the Spanish Lookout community worked to create Farmers Express Road, an impressive expansion of numerous miles. As impressive as these roadway expansion projects have been, and how much they represent the Spanish Lookout community's continuous dedication to improvement, they hold little in comparison to the scope of the purchase of the Yalbak lands. A project a year in the making, the Yalbak purchase represented the most dramatic increase of the original Spanish Lookout community territory, expanding the community northward. The project was not without its challenges, however, as the purchase required an extensive environmental impact assessment to be completed. Through this project, the members of the Spanish Lookout community obtained a greater awareness about the relationship between certain farming practices, such as the use of pesticides, and its potentially harmful impact on the local environment to the waterways. Additionally, this has brought an increased awareness about the importance of conserving land that has historical importance to Belize and the Central American region, both for its archaeological significance as well as the rich natural life in these areas. With this increased awareness of the problems of unregulated growth and expansion, the Spanish Lookout community has taken these lessons into the future, working to be more mindful of the relationship between farming, the natural environment, and the country's natural resources.
Farming has always been a key factor in the community. The need for conservation is definitely more obvious than back some 60 years ago. Back then, the breadwinner was more concerned of how to survive instead of how to keep the forest intact. So from day one, the pioneers really struggled to find ways to adapt to the climate and to cultivate the land and to start growing crops. As time went on, we realized that we could do something to prevent erosion, for instance. To avoid further erosion, some farmers would have placed rocks in the creeks. Some farmers would have left the ditches untouched, regrow with grasses and shrubs and what have you. People are very concerned how they wash their sprayers, how they go about the containers that they use, so there will not be any residue washed into the streamlets, thus killing the fish and waterfalls and what have you.
Because of the involvement of the Department of Environment, more and more of our farmers have become aware and have seen the importance of conservation, planting trees along creeks. For example, the area where I grew up, a lot of forest is coming back, along the creeks especially, and therefore a lot of wildlife is present there, which we didn't see before, which is real nice.
Now 50% larger than it was at the time of its initial purchase, the people of Spanish Lookout are responsible for the maintenance and shepherding over one of Belize's most valued pieces of land, a role they should both be proud of and mindful of as they proceed into the future. Of course, at the end of the day, all this expansion can only happen with increased sales of the Spanish Lookout community's greatest success, farming. Known for their success in corn, dairy, and broilers, the Spanish Lookout community has steadily risen in the region's eye as a producer of fine agricultural products. Nowhere has this expansion been more impressive than in the corn industry, largely supported by the infrastructure of Belcar. With the grain storage capacity now doubled to what it was just a few years ago, Belcar is equipped to take the Spanish Lookout's corn industry to the next level through increasing its presence on the export market stage.
There was an overproduction of beans in the community, so Spanish Lookout started exporting beans into the Caribbean, especially Jamaica. So the farmers eventually pooled resources and purchased the private company as well as a state-of-the-art equipment out of Peru. And that, in the year 2000, put together made the company Belcar Export and Import Company Limited. The business back then was red kidney beans and black-eyed peas, basically. These same farmers eventually grew more and more corn as well for the local feed market. And the production eventually also was more than consumption locally. So they came to the point that in 2009, 2010, we started expanding corn production and went into corn for feed export as well. But then in 2015, we had a drought that seriously affected our productivity to the point that we had to actually cancel a lot of our export contracts. And we were very positive that we'd be able to resume with those contracts in 2016.
Plans for Belcar took an unexpected detour in 2016 when Hurricane Earl's visit resulted in the destruction of $20 million worth of crops and infrastructure. This event also resulted in the departure of several farmers from the Spanish Lookout community, showing the stakes involved for those who rely on good farming to earn a living in the community. As of September 2017, the current crops are looking well and are well on their way to make it to the harvest if God sees fit to make it so. In many ways, however, the future of Spanish Lookout's corn farmers depends on it.
I've been working a little bit over 5 years for Western Dairies. We serve up to 800 to 1,000 persons a day. We have different kind of people. We have diplomats, counselors, students, And of course, we serve the Spanish Lookout community. We have people all over Belize, which we serve every day at Western Dairies. I love interacting with different people from different backgrounds, and I love the atmosphere around here. That's the reason why I love working for Western Dairies.
Western Dairies, one of the country's leading producers of dairy products, continues its rise as one of the most ambitious dairy companies in the Caribbean region. Constantly expanding the variety of items sold, Western Dairies now produces large enough quantities of ice cream, cheese, and milk, among other products, that it has received offers by several non-Belizean companies to supply their products.
Western Dairies has grown substantially over the last 10 years. Where we first were at just a small, we had a little small ice cream outlet, and where we have now added quite a big restaurant to the facility. The bigger expansion happened in 2016, and since we have been established in San Ignacio, 3 branches in Belize City and 1 in Orange Walk. We are presently exporting to 1 country in the Caribbean. We are looking forward, we're working towards being more established in more countries. We are working towards being more competitive with the international market, and we are developing new products for the local market as well as for the export market.
Been living on this farm here for the past 4 years. I have currently have 10,000 broilers on this farm. I also do have 1,500 layers, which are producing approximately 1,400 eggs per day. A typical day for here at the farm would be a worker would come in and gather the eggs, clean the eggs, and make them ready to be delivered to the distribution center.
This chicken farmer represents just one of the many people living in Spanish Lookout who earn their living by way of fowl. With the continued centrality of chicken to the Belizean diet, there is little to prevent Spanish Lookout's chicken industry from continuing to expand over the next years. Although a tragedy at the time, costing chicken farmers significant amounts of their poultry population, the encounter with the avian influenza in 2015 proved another example of the Spanish Lookout community coming together for the benefit of everyone involved.
As a farmer and as the whole community, we must focus on Jesus Christ first. And if we will follow His Holy Spirit and listen to His voice, there will be successfulness in whatever you do. Farming, mission, wherever you go. And if you don't have that in focus in front of you, I believe I'm a loser. So that's why it's important to me. Listen to the Holy Spirit.
Since 2000, the Spanish Lookout community is no longer governed by a single church, and instead, its future is determined by the contributions made by the membership of the Spanish Lookout community.
Since the church no longer runs the Spanish Lookout community, looking back, I believe it was definitely a milestone in the history of Spanish Lookout. It was a step in the right direction. When the church governed the community, people felt pressured to conform to the standards of the church, and they didn't really feel that freedom to express themselves and worship to the Lord the way they felt led. The biblical principles that we find in the scriptures have definitely contributed to the success of this community. In that I believe that when we live by Christian principles, obviously it teaches us to be honest, it teaches us to be hardworking, it teaches us to, all these things that I believe steer us in a positive direction, and I believe as a result the Lord blesses it. And I think God has definitely been an important aspect to the fact that the community is successful.
The freedom for people to practice their Christian faith in a wide variety of settings in both governmental positions and the community leadership has created a more dynamic community where people are able to encounter the Lord in a manner that suits their interests. Despite the removal of a single church from the Spanish Lookout governing body, most Spanish Lookout community members continue to seek the will of God and allow Him to guide their hearts and minds, helping to create trust, loyalty, and honesty within the community. The Spanish Lookout community has several leaders reaching out to the local communities, providing work and education for people who may otherwise have neither. A mission school was established around 1980s, which was soon taken over by members of the community for children of the surrounding villages. The surrounding villages were formed when refugees from neighboring countries settled in Belize. From the beginning, it was evident that the Spanish Lookout community and the settled refugees could establish a good working relationship. That relationship has proven to be a great success to the extent where many of the villagers work in this community, including in managerial positions. It is quite clear that the villagers and the Spanish Lookout community have learned to depend on each other.
Yeah, we hire our people from outside the community, like Dr. Tree and Los Thomas and Selena. I believe it's God's will that we help the surrounding villages, so that's why we give them job and we help them with the education.
As Spanish Lookout grows, its relationship with other Belizean entrepreneurs also expands, leading to more collaboration over the past 10 years than it has experienced in the previous 50 years of the community's founding. One of the reasons the founders moved from Canada to Mexico to Belize was in order to preserve the Mennonite way of a Bible-based education, and in that regard, the community has succeeded in its goals.
The skill structure here at secondary consists of starting at 7:30 in the morning, having a 10-minute break and later a 15-minute break, and we're quitting at 11:35. The students have homework to do in the afternoon. At school, we study math, Bible, language arts, science, social, some music and memory, and most of the curriculum is out of Christian Light Education from Virginia, United States.
At school we sing songs and say memory verses, and our teacher tells us Bible stories, and sometimes on a Wednesday afternoon we have maps of the USA. I hope to be a teacher or help my dad at KT.
In looking to the future, education will be central to the success of the Spanish Lookout community. With ever-expanding businesses, the young people of Spanish Lookout will need to learn new technologies, new farming techniques, and advanced business practices in order to maintain an edge on the international markets. As the number of students increase each year, the people of Spanish Lookout will need to create better support systems for teachers who will be under ever-increasing workloads. With school funding improved in 2011, the Spanish Lookout community will need to continue to raise its efforts in order to best equip its next generation of farmers, business people, teachers, mechanics, conservationists, and more.
Okay, besides farming, we need new skills like veterinary, IT, doctors, nurses, and all of this will help Spanish Lookout to develop a better future.
In terms of education, my desire is to teach them how to study well so that if they decide to, go on to college or university, that they would be well prepared to be the best at whatever God has for their life.
Family is an important pillar to the community and is held in high esteem. Father leads the home spiritually and provides for the family. Mother ensures the children are properly clothed and adequately fed with delicious homemade meals which are eaten together at the dinner table. Children are trained to respect the elders and properly behave. It is the dream of almost every young boy and girl to one day start his and her own family and continue to pass on this importance of family.
So we went to Countryside Park, we go down the trail, it's pouring down rain, and there's this layer of water just flowing right around the trail, and it's just perfect. And as we turn the bend, there's a beautiful palm tree, and I turned around, I said, honey, we've been through sunshine and rain, and I want to be with you through all of it for the rest of our life. And I got down on my knee and I said, will you marry me? And she said, yes. Well, I grew up in a wonderful home in Spanish Lookout. I grew up on a little farm. I feel really blessed. And as I grow up, I keep looking forward and I keep looking to the rest of Belize, and I'm really hoping that I can be a blessing to the rest of this country and to be an example to help prosper this nation and grow this nation.
Countryside Park came about as the result of a need for Spanish Lookout people to have a place of its own for large gatherings. Now it is also a place that hosts numerous festivals and expositions. Countryside Park marks the rare community project that will be crucial to the maintenance of the community in the years to come. At 60, the Spanish Lookout community is only now hitting its stride. Home to some of the most successful businesses in the country, the Spanish Lookout community is poised to continue being a community working toward a prosperous future. Only time can tell where the community goes next. But so long as people trust one another, keep honest, and continue to innovate in the way Spanish Lookout community has since its founding, and above all other, seek and fulfill the will of Almighty God, Spanish Lookout community will continue to be one of the most remarkable stories of a community founded in the Jewel of Belize.